Ever see one of those headlines, coffee cures everything or video games are ruining the world? And you just stop and wonder, wait, how do they actually know that? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to get into the toolbox researchers use to figure out what's real and what's just noise. And really, almost all of those headlines boil down to this one super simple question: does A cause B? It looks easy enough, right? But proving it? Oh, that is where the real work, the real scientific detective work, truly begins. So let's take a real world example, something from our source material here. It's this idea of evaluating whether playing violent video games is associated with kids being more aggressive on the playground. It's a question we've all heard, for sure. We've got our A, the video games, and our B, the aggression. But for real, just stop and think for a second. How would you prove it? How could you be absolutely certain that it's the video games causing the aggression and not, I don't know, a dozen other things? It's a huge challenge. And lucky for us, researchers have come up with some pretty brilliant ways to get to the bottom of it. So when it comes to tackling that A causes B question, researchers basically have two main paths they can take. They've got the survey and they've got the experiment. Now, they might sound kind of similar, but trust me, they're built for completely different things. And this right here, this is the most important difference to get. Think of a survey like taking a snapshot in time. It's awesome for seeing what's going on out there, for spotting trends, and finding connections, what scientists call a correlation. But an experiment, that's not a snapshot. That's an active, controlled test. You're actually changing something on purpose to see what happens. And that is the only way you can ever really prove that one thing causes another. All right, so let's dig into the first one, the survey. The best way to think about this is like it's the blueprint for creating a super detailed map of the world, just as it is right now. Describing trends, what people think, and how they feel. And when I say detailed, I am not kidding. I mean, just look at this checklist. A good survey plan has to account for everything: who you're going to ask, exactly how you'll word the questions, even the specific stats you'll run later. It looks pretty intense, but the good news is it all kind of boils down to three main stages. Yeah, you can really break it down into these three key steps. First, who are you actually studying? That's your population and your sample. Second, what are you going to ask them? That's your instrument, like a questionnaire. And third, once you have all the answers, what are you going to do with them? That's your whole analysis plan, all figured out ahead of time. Now, if you want that snapshot to be truly trustworthy, there is one magic ingredient: random sampling. The idea is super simple. Everyone in the group you're studying gets an equal chance of being picked. It's kind of like putting every single name into a giant hat and drawing a few out. This is the absolute gold standard for avoiding bias and making sure the small group you talk to actually represents the whole population. Okay, so surveys are great for describing the world. But what if you actually want to change something? Well, that's where our second path comes in, the experiment. This isn't about mapping what's already there. It's about stepping in and making a change to find the cause of something. And just like with surveys, this is not something you just wing. I mean, look at the level of detail on this experimental plan. Every single variable, every little step of the procedure, it's all planned out in advance. And it's all for one reason: to perfectly isolate that one thing you want to test. The process, it looks a little similar at the start, right? You get your participants, but step two, that is the secret sauce. It's called random assignment. You take your participants and, totally at random, you put them into different groups. Then you manipulate a variable, meaning you change something for one group but not the other. And finally, you just measure the outcome and see if your change actually made a difference. And this right here, this gets to the absolute core of what makes an experiment so powerful. That one little step, randomly assigning people to groups, is what makes it a true experiment. See, by leaving it all up to chance, you basically create two groups that are identical in every way. And that means you can be super confident that the one thing you changed is what really truly caused the result you saw. It gives you a level of certainty that a survey just can't touch. Okay, but even with the most perfectly designed study, things can go wrong. In the world of research, these are called threats to validity, which is really just a fancy way of asking, can we actually trust these results? I mean, it's the ultimate question, isn't it? How do you know the results are real? Was it really the thing you tested that caused the outcome, or could something else have interfered? It's something researchers are constantly worried about. First, you've got what are called internal threats. These are problems that pop up from inside the study itself. So for example, this table here mentions history. Imagine you're testing a new therapy to make people happier, but right in the middle of your study, everyone in the group wins the lottery. Well, that's going to totally mess up your results, right? Or another one is mortality, which sounds grim, but it just means people dropping out. If all the really sad people drop out of your happiness therapy group, the group is going to look way more successful than it actually was. And then you have external threats. And this one is a big deal. This is all about asking, okay, so your findings are true in the lab, but do they apply to anybody else in the real world? A study that's only done on, say, 20-year-old college kids might not tell you anything about how 65-year-olds would react. So even if a result is true inside the little bubble of the experiment, you always have to ask if it generalizes to the rest of us. All right, so you've designed your study, you've run it, you've dodged all those pitfalls. Now you're just sitting on a giant pile of data. The last step, and it's a huge one, is turning all those numbers into something that actually has meaning. So you've probably heard this term before, statistical significance, or a p-value. It sounds complicated, but all it really is a probability check. It just answers one question. What are the odds that I would have gotten this result by pure random chance? So a small p-value, usually less than 0.05, tells you, hey, this result is probably not just a fluke. But, and this is a big but, that's not the whole story. You also have to know the effect size. This tells you how big or how strong the finding is. It answers the more practical question. Okay, so the result is probably real, but is it actually big enough to matter? And this is exactly why you always need to look for both. You can have a result that's statistically significant, but the actual effect is so tiny that it's basically useless in the real world. On the flip side, you could have a huge, really important effect that gets missed because the study was too small to be significant. To really understand what's going on, you need both pieces of the puzzle, significance and a meaningful effect size. So the next time you see one of those big, bold headlines, you now have the single most powerful question you can ask. Just ask yourself, are they showing me a simple connection, something they probably found in a survey? Or did they actually prove it was the cause with a true experiment? Because being able to tell the difference between those two, well, that changes everything about how you see the world.